Hello everyone, Bront CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking about Raid Shadow Legends, and I just wanted to make a quick video reacting to the balance and notification that Raid put out. You can see this in Discord. If you haven't had a chance, you can actually join my Discord server and get announcements from the Raid Shadow Legends official server. You can also join Raid Shadow Legends official Discord server. They're both available. They're both very, very useful. I'd like to think mine's great because I've got a wonderful community. You can talk with me. You can talk with other people in my community. We love helping each other out. You can get notifications on when I go live, questions about video, provide feedback on my content. It's a great community. You guys are awesome. Definitely appreciate you all. But let's talk a little bit about what Raid's got going here. Hey Raiders, it's been quite a while since we committed to the current state in Hydra in general, and in Hydra Clash in particular. This topic remains hot, and we need to clarify our position and intentions towards this mighty creature. We acknowledge that Hydra Clash currently does not work as intended. Really? Yeah, it does not. And is off balance as a game mode. Here goes heads up to what directions we are prioritizing to alleviate the issue. So now we've gone into a couple of different options, and we'll talk about some of these. Modifying the Hydra's general battle mechanics. Some champions are great, but become extraordinary when fighting Hydra specifically, which indicates an issue rather with the Hydra's mechanics itself first and foremost. Thus, we consider tweaking Hydra's overarching mechanics as a boss overall. I think this is a bad take on what's causing the problem. Yes, there are Hydra mechanics that are annoying, but the Hydra mechanics weren't an issue until people found some of these exploits. And the only reason these exploits are a problem is because of the way Hydra Clash is structured. So changing the Hydra, I don't think fixes the issue as much as fixing some of the champions that have the problem. And the problem with that is that involves possible nerfs to champions, and Plarium is really gun shy with nerfs, which, to be fair, in a collectible gacha game, nerfs need to be well thought out. And Plarium, well thinking out balance, probably not their strong suit. But I think this is a bad take. I do, however, think that one of the better ways they could address this, which is with additional heads. Additional heads would add new mechanics. Additional heads may find ways to nerf certain champions, but then empower others to be just as interesting and useful. And it makes the rotations a little more meaningful. Because right now, for high-end Hydra, you build a team that deals with the 6 heads, and you're done with it, and you never touch your team again, other than improving it to making sure it's continuing to do more damage. And sometimes you're changing it for meta purposes, or maybe you've gotten a different champion that helps, but you're not changing it because of the rotation much anymore. I think that if they're just going to change how the heads work, I think that's bad. I also, as a content creator, will be annoyed because I just put out a couple of really big videos on Hydra, so I'd have to remake those. But that's not the biggest concern, and I'd rather have a good game that requires me to do new videos than not. I just think that new heads would be a better way of modifying the Hydra mechanics rather than changing the mechanics themselves. So let's take a look at the next one. Changes to the Hydra Clash competition that would make fighting Hydra on higher difficulties more appealing in terms of the number of Hydra Clash points. For interest, adjusting multiple points. On the other hand, putting a cap on maximum damage or the number of Hydra Clash points of each difficulty looks a bit heavy-handed. It is not in our plans currently. First of all, I agree putting a cap is bad, because putting a cap basically means that people are going to hit the cap, and then you're going to have a bunch of teams that this team hits the cap and be done with it. And I think that's a bad way to deal with it. I also don't think that adjusting the multipliers is really going to help, because early on in the Trunda meta, it was easier to build some of these huge damage teams on the low ones, but the meta right now is to do this on Nightmare, and a lot of these teams are capable of using Trunda teams on Nightmare and running them and doing all kinds of damage, and Nightmare gives you a 4 times multiplier. So making the Nightmare multiplier higher is actually going to make the problem worse, not better. So I'm not a big fan of that. I do understand that some of the teams work, some of these special exploitive teams work better on normal or hard or even brutal than they do on Nightmare. But on Nightmare, you can still use some of the top teams that are causing problems, specifically the Trunda, Yumiko, Reset teams. And those are the biggest problems. So I don't think this is going to help anybody either. I do, however, appreciate that they're looking into changing that a little bit, because I still think that you can do something to help balance this and encourage people to hit higher up in Hydra. Whether that means mechanical changes as well. And I guess with the general battle mechanics, if they adjust some of the stats of Hydra on hard or brutal, for example, to make hard and brutal slightly more accessible, and then Nightmare becomes a little bit harder, that might be fine too. That's another way to deal with the first part that's not as bad. But overall, I'm not liking where they're going so far from this. Rebalancing specific champions. Only when Hydra Clash mode and Hydra as a boss are adjusted, and only if the champion's rebalance is necessary at this point. This tells me, and tells hopefully you guys, everything you need to know. They don't want to nerf champions. And normally I'm a big fan of not wanting to nerf champions. I think there's a couple of champions that are causing very specific problems that they need to fix. Now, bugs, they absolutely do need to fix, and they found a couple bugs that they're fixing. They're fixing Yinsenzo, I believe, has a bug where you can speed up, or not speed up, you can extend the poison cloud, so that is problematic. So that needs to be addressed because that's not intended. Wixwell, on the other hand, is working as intended, so I understand why he's not considered a bug per se. Trunda is technically working as intended, although I don't know if Trunda's actually really working as intended or not. Uh, Yumiko works as intended. Those are not champions they're looking to touch. They definitely need to touch the champions that are bugged. But your Trunda teams need to get looked at. Some of these shield reversal teams do need to get looked at. We'll talk about this after we're done. I'll put my thoughts on things that they might be able to do. Consolation rewards for being ranked 4th or 5th in Hydra Clash. This is one of the two things they need to do to make Hydra Clash more accessible. They don't need to give away a ton of accessories. One accessory for coming in 5th, 2 accessories for 4th place is better than nothing, because coming in 4th or 5th really, really hurts, especially when you are spending a lot of time and energy. The other problem they still have with Hydra Clash, though, is the minimum chest of 35 million points is too high for a lot of low-level champions and low-level teams. If you're just hitting Hydra normal and you're barely getting the top chest, if 3 teams, you cannot participate in Hydra Clash effectively. That is a negative for your team. That is a negative for the player experience as well. They need to make a chest for under 35 or 39 or whatever the lowest chest is for all levels. Doesn't have to be amazing. If I can get a single 5-star accessory, that can help my count as an early game account. So why prevent me from getting something super simple, not very powerful? I think it's a big deal. So what would I do instead? Well, first of all, they do mention that this list of directions outlined may be changed or expanded depending on reality of what they want to do. So it sounds like this is what they think they want to do. They haven't actually decided on what they're doing. So that's good. So hopefully they'll hear some of this stuff and some of the feedback here and change their mind. What can they do? Well, one of the things that they could do is put a cap on damage per hit on the Hydra overall. They already have a max HP limit, and that's fine. That works well enough. It prevents champions with the max HPs from doing all the damage and just absolutely nuking. So it prevents basically from doing a seer wave clear on the heads and clearing the heads, and you're done with them. And I think that's good. You could certainly do something similar with other champions as well. Now, I don't think 10% is a particularly good number at that point in time. You may have to go up to a 40 or 50%. So a head cannot take more than 50% of its max HP in any one hit, would be, for example, a good semi-stopgap measure. This would prevent, even undecapitated heads, from getting billions upon billions of damage from a single hit. It would also stop the ability to one-shot the heads, which at the high end of the teams that are doing the billions of damage, they're one-shotting heads, even if they have the decreased defense and they're one-shotting the heads, even if they have the damage reduction up. And I think that limit could be helpful. And to be fair, I worry about that because capping damage like that could have similar results to, as I mentioned before, capping how much damage you could actually do to the boss overall. So it could effectively limit how much damage you can do. There's some end game cap of this is the most damage, and it often causes problems with RNG where you basically want specific heads up so you can do more damage to those heads if you're constantly just killing them and going through the teams. So is there a good solution to this? I'm not sure. I'm not a big fan of the way Hydra Clash is dealt with in the first place. You could certainly do other point alignments. You could change how the points are aligned overall so it's not purely based off of damage. That would certainly be somewhat helpful, but then that nerfs the damage, and, damage is kind of all that this is about. I really don't like that Hydra Clash is a PvE contest of PvP. So it's turned something that should be a fun, challenging boss for everyone. And while it's given us reasons to build teams that do more and more and more damage, it really has turned into a horrible, horrible experience. I know I've commented on Blazen's podcast how Hydra Clash almost made me quit the game. I was really upset with how Hydra Clash was working. My clan got screwed royally. We lost 9 of 10 in a row through a combination of losing our top 2 hitters to real life stuff, and it was fine. I'm not upset about that. Things happen. And between that and the way the balancing worked, plus the fact that we were not using the cheese teams, and then suddenly other people were using the cheese teams, we came in 4th or 5th, 9 out of 10 weeks in a row, and the balancing just never came about, and we never got a good balanced option because every time we would go up against a clan, they would just go hard and we'd get murdered, and we had no prayer, and we've got sniping, and it just was not fun. And we couldn't get the gear we needed, and then it was hurting the account because being unable to get some of that gear made it harder for us to build teams to get the gear, and therefore we were falling behind in a PvP stance. We were falling behind in Platinum Arena for folks that wanted to do Platinum Arena, and we started losing people in our clan because people wanted to win, and so they went to clans that were able to do it. And I think it was just overall a horrible, horrible experience, and I don't like it. So, can Plarium fix this? I don't know. I don't have a lot of confidence that they actually know what the problem is, given what this post says. But I like the fact that they are listening. I like the fact that they are actually putting out a statement that they know there's a problem with this. And hopefully they will continue to work on it and find ways to improve Hydra. I really think that the biggest things they could do to help improve the situation would be to add more heads, because that would certainly change the meta just a little bit, and fix some of the consolation rewards so that people that are only hitting less than 35 million or whatever the bottom chest is still can get a couple of these accessories from Hydra Clash. That at least gives you some participation reasons, and it means that at least the folks that are getting the 4th and 5th level are not getting royally screwed, especially if they're in early clans that just can't compete. It makes no sense the way this is structured. I realize this is supposed to be an end game competition, but you want to make it accessible for your early game teams to get them hooked into it as well. Overall, those are some of my thoughts. Hopefully you found them kind of interesting. What are your thoughts? Leave a comment down below. Hit that subscribe button if you get a chance. Hit like if you enjoy the video. Hit dislike if you don't like the video. But let me know what you're thinking about Hydra Clash. I know some of the official content creators, and while I'm not one myself, I can certainly pass it on to them and make sure that they get some of this feedback so that Plarium gets this feedback from you guys as well. Let's try to make Hydra Clash better for everyone. So hopefully you're having a great day. You all take care. Thanks for watching. I'm Bront CatHerder.